Let me ask you something. If God gave you the ability to create wealth, but you're still living paycheck to paycheck, what's missing? It's not your effort. It's not your time. It's a principle. Because principles are what produce prosperity, not hustle, not grind, not guessing. See, people chase money, but money was never meant to be chased. It was meant to be attracted. And what attracts money? Alignment with the right principle. One divine principle can shift your entire financial life. One principle can take you from barely getting by to living in overflow. And that's what I want to give you today. You don't need more money. You need the principle that produces it. This statement goes against what most people believe. The world teaches us that the solution to our financial problems is simply to make more money. Get a better job, start a side hustle, work overtime, win the lottery, land a deal, just increase the cash flow. But in reality, money is never the root issue. It's always a byproduct. It's the fruit, not the seed. The principle that produces money is far more powerful than chasing the money itself. Because when you understand the principle, money becomes inevitable. It becomes predictable. It becomes sustainable. But when you only chase money without knowing the law that governs its creation, you end up in a cycle of grind, anxiety, scarcity, and even fear. The principle of financial increase is rooted in cause and effect. There's a cause that creates wealth, and there's a cause that prevents it. If you violate the principle, even if you work 16 hours a day, you'll still feel like you're spinning your wheels. But if you align with the principle, doors open, ideas flow, people come, and provision shows up. God doesn't bless effort alone. He blesses alignment with his laws. That's why some people seem to do less but get more. It's not that they're lucky. It's that they're in alignment. The problem is most people have been programmed to think that more effort equals more income, but they've never been taught the law that creates wealth. They've never been taught the principle behind the prosperity. They've been taught what to chase, not how to become. The principle that produces money is not new. It's eternal. It's baked into the universe. It's the same principle that governs sowing and reaping. Just like you don't expect to harvest apples if you never plant seeds, you shouldn't expect to harvest the money if you never operate by the principle that brings financial increase. The world of finances is governed by spiritual laws. And when you operate by spiritual law, you unlock natural results. So instead of praying for money, you start applying the principle that brings it. Instead of asking for a miracle to pay bills, you become a steward of the law that generates surplus. Because once you understand how a principle works, you don't need to keep begging for provision. You just activate the law and reap the reward. Most people think money comes from a job, a business, or a client. But those are just channels. Money comes from understanding and applying the principle that governs increase. It comes from the inside out, not the outside in. The job might change. The client might leave. The business might pivot, but if you possess the principle that produces money, you'll never be broke again. You'll never be dependent on the system again. You'll never be a slave to survival again. Because the source of your wealth is no longer external, it's internal, and it's activated by wisdom. That's what Solomon understood when he asked God not for riches, but for wisdom. Because he knew that wisdom is the master key. And wisdom comes with principles. One principle, fully understood and applied, is more valuable than a lifetime of labor without clarity. That principle is this: money is attracted to value, not activity, not business, not effort, value. When you bring value to the marketplace, when you solve a problem, when you ease a pain, when you fulfill a need, money comes as a reward for the value you deliver. You don't get paid by the hour. You get paid by the problem you solve per hour. And that means if you want more money, you don't need more time. You need to produce more value in the time you already have. You need to become more valuable. The most financially free people in the world didn't get there by working longer hours. They got there by learning how to operate according to the principle of value exchange. Now, value is not just about what you do. It's about who you become. Because when you develop yourself, you increase your capacity to deliver value. That's why the principle is not just transactional. It's transformational. You don't attract more income by doing more random tasks. You attract more income by becoming the kind of person who creates more value as a byproduct of who you are. And who you are is shaped by what you believe, what you think, what you study, and what you practice daily. So financial freedom begins not with a paycheck, but with a mindset that says, I don't chase money. I produce value. A mindset that says, money is not my master, it's my servant. A mindset that says, I am the source of my increase because I'm connected to divine principles. Too often, people confuse income with wealth. Income is temporary. Wealth is the result of living in agreement with a principle over time. You can make the $10 in a day and lose it all in a month if you don't operate by principle. You can inherit a fortune and squander it in a year if you don't understand the laws that govern it. But when you live by the principle that produces money, the principle of sowing stewardship value, multiplication, you don't just receive money, you retain it, you grow it, you reproduce it. Because your wealth is no longer circumstantial, it's structural. It's built on something eternal, not emotional. This is why you see people who once had nothing become extremely wealthy. It's not because they found a shortcut, it's because they found the principle. And once they aligned with it, their life began to elevate. They began to think differently, talk differently, invest differently, serve differently. The principles shaped their behavior, and their behavior produced results. The problem is, the average person is still praying for a financial blessing while violating the law that would unlock it. They're spending what they should be stewarding. They're consuming what they should be multiplying. They're asking God to fix what they've been given authority to govern. But when you start to understand that money is not the root, it's the fruit, you stop trying to manipulate the harvest and start focusing on mastering the principle. Principles are no respecter of persons. They don't care where you're from, how old you are, what mistakes you've made, or what level you're starting at. They only care whether or not you obey them. The principle doesn't favor the rich over the poor. It favors the aligned over the scattered, the focused over the distracted, the consistent over the chaotic. And once you apply the principle consistently, the money follows. It has no choice. Because the law of value exchange is just as real as the law of gravity. You don't have to feel it for it to work. You just have to use it. And the more you work the principle, the more the principle works for you. Because financial freedom is not a dream. It's a decision. It's a commitment to live by the laws that govern wealth instead of the emotions that govern survival. God's design is for you to be a producer, not just a consumer. This truth dismantles the modern narrative that tells us our role is to work, earn, spend, repeat. Society conditions people to live in cycles of consumption, buying things to feel better, chasing material satisfaction, and measuring success by how much you accumulate. But from the very beginning, God placed mankind in the garden not to consume but to cultivate. Adam wasn't put in Eden to lounge around and take. He was placed there to till, to grow, to multiply, to steward. That means the original assignment on humanity was productivity, not passivity. The divine intention was that we would reflect God's nature by creating, building, developing, and expanding everything placed in our care. We were not just made to survive, we were made to produce fruit, to manifest increase, and to multiply what we've been given. When you understand that your divine identity is that of a producer, you stop waiting for opportunities and start creating them. You stop blaming the economy and start building your own. You realize that your value is not based on what you consume, but on what you contribute. The enemy's strategy is always to make you forget your role. If he can convince you that you're just here to consume, then you'll live beneath your authority, constantly looking outward for solutions that were always meant to flow from within. But producers understand that they are the solution. They are the resource. They are the vessel through which wealth is created, problems are solved, and purpose is fulfilled. Producers take ownership. Consumers wait for someone else to solve the problem. And as long as you're in consumer mode, you will always be dependent on someone else's system, someone else's decision, someone else's validation. God doesn't just bless the takers. He blesses the multipliers, the ones who take what they've been given and turn it into more. In the parable of the talents, it was the servants who produced a return who received the reward. The one who buried his gift, the one who played it safe and consumed without producing, was called wicked and lazy. Not because he made a mistake, but because he refused to produce. That shows us something profound. To fail to produce when you've been given the ability to do so is to fall short of your assignment. You were made to be fruitful. You were made to dominate your space, to generate increase, to manifest solutions. When you step into that mindset, everything changes. Your posture shifts from taking to giving, from surviving to thriving, from fear to faith. Producers don't look at what they lack. They focus on what they can leverage. They ask different questions. Consumers say, why don't I have more? Producers say, what can I do with what I already have? When you see yourself as a producer, you begin to treat your time, your talents, your relationships, your resources, and your opportunities with a different level of intentionality. You begin to realize that your ideas are not random, they are seeds. Your conversations are not casual, they are soil. Your environment is not neutral, it's either cultivating growth or consuming your energy. The shift from consumer to producer begins in how you see yourself. It's an identity shift, not just a behavior shift. When you know that you were created in the image of a creator, you stop sitting still and waiting for permission to prosper. You understand that permission was granted when you were born. This principle is critical when it comes to financial freedom because the marketplace rewards producers. Money is attracted to those who solve problems, who add value, who bring something of worth to the table. The consumer mindset waits for a paycheck, waits for a raise, waits for an opportunity. The producer mindset creates streams, builds systems, generates solutions. That's why two people can be in the same industry, doing the same work, yet one thrives and the other survives. It's not about the field. It's about the frame. It's not just what you do. It's how you see what you do. When you operate with a producer's mindset, even the smallest task becomes a seed of increase. You stop doing things to get by and start doing things to grow. Your excellence increases. Your discipline increases. Your faith increases. Because you know that everything you do is a part of the production line of your destiny. People often wonder why they feel stuck financially, emotionally, or spiritually. In many cases, it's not because they lack opportunity, but because they've been living in consumer mode. They've been waiting for someone to give them a chance instead of using what's already in their hand. Moses had a stick. David had a sling. The widow had a jar of oil. None of these resources seemed extraordinary until they were used with a producer's mindset. The moment you stop seeing what you have as insufficient and start using it as the raw material of purpose, you activate increase. That's why mindset is everything. Because before you can produce something externally, you have to shift something internally. You have to move from dependency to dominion, from passivity to productivity, from scarcity to stewardship. The most powerful force you have is not money, it's creativity. It's the ability to produce something where nothing existed before. That's what producers do. They take vision and turn it into value. They take faith and turn it into fruit. They take ideas and turn them into income. That's not hustle, that's kingdom. Because true producers understand that their productivity is not driven by pressure but by purpose. They're not working to prove, they're working to fulfill. They're not chasing money, they're chasing multiplication. And in doing so, the money comes, the opportunities come, the resources come. Not because they're chasing them, but because they're walking in alignment with the divine design for their life. A producer sees setbacks differently. While a consumer sees a problem and stops, a producer sees a problem and asks, what can I build from this? Every obstacle becomes raw material. Every failure becomes feedback. Every delay becomes a setup for refinement. That mindset turns adversity into advantage. It doesn't mean things are always easy, but it means you never approach life from a position of weakness. You operate from a place of ownership. Ownership of your time, ownership of your gifts, ownership of your calling. And when you walk in ownership, you no longer tolerate lack, laziness, or limitation. You start demanding more from yourself. You become a leader of your environment, not a prisoner of your circumstances. This principle also destroys the entitlement trap. When you see yourself as a producer, you realize no one owes you anything. And at the same time, you realize you're capable of creating everything. You stop waiting for someone to come save you and start building the thing that will elevate you. You stop asking for favors and start creating offers. You stop looking for quick fixes and start designing long-term fruit. Because producers play the long game. They're not looking for hype. They're building legacy. They're not chasing applause. They're cultivating impact. And impact attracts income, not just once, but continuously. Because the marketplace will always reward the people who show up to solve real problems with real value in real time. In today's economy, producers are the ones who rise. In any field, in any business, in any community. The ones who embrace the role of producer become the pillars. They are the ones who create jobs, start movements, launch initiatives, and birth solutions. They are the ones who shift cultures and shape futures. And the most powerful thing is that you don't have to wait for someone to pick you. You can step into this identity today. You can begin to operate as a producer regardless of your background, your current bank account, or your formal education. Because being a producer is not about a title. It's about a mindset. It's about a choice. It's about embracing your God, give an assignment to multiply what's been placed in your hands. Money is a reward for value, not effort. That single revelation can shatter years of struggle and confusion in people's lives. For too long, individuals have been conditioned to believe that working harder guarantees wealth. We hear phrases like, no pain, no gain, and grind until you die. But the truth is many people work hard every day and still live in lack. The janitor who cleans with excellence works hard. The nurse who does double shifts works hard. But their bank accounts don't reflect the intensity of their labor, because money doesn't flow to hard work. It flows to value. And the world doesn't pay for sweat. It pays for solutions. Until someone understands the difference between effort and value, they will continue to exchange time for money and wonder why they feel stuck. Effort is what you put in. Value is what someone else receives. That's the distinction most people miss. You can put in endless effort doing something that nobody wants, and it won't produce wealth. But when you produce value, something that improves someone's life, solves a problem, or fulfills a desire, money flows naturally. It's the marketplace's way of saying, thank you. The money you receive is not just payment. It's a certificate of appreciation for the value you've created. That's why some people can speak for an hour and earn 6 figures, while others work 8 hours for minimum wage. It's not always fair, but it is principle-based. The principle is value creates wealth, not time or sweat or emotion. People have to understand that we're not just in a labor economy anymore. We're in a value economy. This means the highest earners are not necessarily the hardest workers, but the most valuable contributors. If you focus on making yourself more valuable, money will chase you. But if you focus only on working harder without increasing your value, you'll always be chasing money. This is a mindset shift that separates producers from laborers. Producers ask, how can I become more valuable to the marketplace? Consumers ask, how can I get paid more for what I'm already doing? But until you increase value, compensation doesn't increase. It's not about working more hours. It's about working with more wisdom, more strategy, more alignment. Value is not just about what you know. It's about how what you know impacts others. Your knowledge, your skills, your experience, your story, all of it has the potential to produce value, but it must be packaged, positioned, and presented in a way that the marketplace can receive it. That's why 2 people can have the same degree or the same training, but one earns exponentially more. One of them learned how to convert their information into transformation. And transformation is what the world pays for. If you want to increase your income, you must first increase your impact. If you want people to invest in you, you have to show them how you can help them achieve something they care about. This is why wealth building starts with self-development. The more you grow, the more valuable you become. When you invest in learning new skills, mastering your craft, improving your communication, refining your delivery, you become more attractive to the people you serve. People don't pay you for your potential, they pay you for your results. But the good news is that results are predictable when you understand how to apply the principle of value creation. You can design your outcomes by designing the value you deliver. Whether it's through a product, a service, a solution, or a system, your job is to figure out how to solve real problems for real people. That's the foundation of wealth. It's also important to understand that value is subjective. What's valuable to one person may be irrelevant to another. That's why you don't need to be valuable to everyone. You only need to be valuable to someone. You don't have to reach the masses to build wealth. You just need to serve a specific group at a deep level. When you solve a meaningful problem for a specific audience, your value skyrockets. And with that value comes leverage. Leverage means you can now scale your impact without scaling your hours. Instead of getting paid once per task, you can get paid multiple times for one solution. That's how products are born. That's how systems are built. That's how residual income is created. And that is how financial freedom is achieved, not by effort, but by value leveraged through systems. You must also understand that the perception of value is often as powerful as the value itself. If people don't understand what you offer, they won't pay for it, even if it could change their life. That's why clarity, communication, and positioning matter. You must learn how to present your value in a way that resonates with your ideal audience. It's not enough to be good. You have to be clear. If your audience can't see how your product or service helps them get from where they are to where they want to be, they won't engage. Communication is the bridge between your value and their investment. It's your responsibility to build that bridge. At the core of all this is a simple question: what problem do you solve? The more urgent and painful the problem, the higher the value of the solution. That's why brain surgeons earn more than baristas. The value of their solution is greater. But the principle is the same. Find a problem, solve it well, deliver it effectively. That's how you create wealth. And don't think this only applies to entrepreneurs. Whether you're in a job, a business, a ministry, or a mission, value creation is universal. You can bring value by improving efficiency, enhancing results, creating better experiences, solving technical issues, reducing waste, building relationships, or increasing joy. Wherever you are, you can become more valuable. And when you do, you'll attract more compensation. It's also worth noting that value isn't only external. Internal value, your mindset, your attitude, your energy, also affects how people experience you. If you bring peace into a chaotic room, that's value. If you bring clarity into confusion, that's value. If you bring excellence into mediocrity, that's value. And the more you carry these internal values, the more doors open. People want to be around those who elevate environments. That creates opportunity. That expands your network. That increases your influence. And all of it is tied to your willingness to show up and create value, even when you're not being watched or applauded. There's also a deep spiritual dimension to value. Scripture says, a man's gift makes room for him. That gift is your value. And it's not just talent. It's the divine deposit placed in you to serve others. When you operate in that gift, you tap into a flow that produces provision. Your gift was never meant to lie dormant. It was given for the purpose of production. When you stir it up, develop it, and deploy it, you honor the God who gave it to you, and you position yourself for abundance. Not because you're chasing riches, but because you're aligning with your purpose. And purpose always produces provision. Ultimately, if you want financial freedom, you must stop trading effort for money and start trading value for money. That means focusing on who you serve, what you solve, and how you scale. It means measuring success not by how tired you are, but by how transformed others are through your work. It means asking not, how hard did I work today, but how much value did I deliver today? That simple shift changes everything. Because the world may not reward your effort, but it will always reward your value. Financial freedom flows through alignment, not hustle. This principle breaks the back of one of the greatest lies people have believed for decades, that working harder will eventually get you ahead. Society teaches us to glorify hustle culture, to romanticize burnout, and to celebrate being busy as if it's some badge of honor. But in reality, hustle without alignment is chaos dressed in productivity's clothing. Hustle without direction leads people in circles, leaving them exhausted, broke, and confused. On the surface, they're moving, but spiritually, mentally, and financially, they're stuck. Because movement isn't the same as progress. And without alignment, hustle becomes a trap instead of a tool. Alignment is about getting in position with purpose. It's about living, working, and building in accordance with divine order and design. When a person is aligned, things flow. Relationships make sense. Business gets clear. Decisions come with peace. There's a rhythm to success that isn't forced or manipulated. It's natural. But that rhythm only emerges when you're walking what you were created to do. Hustle alone will drain you, but alignment will sustain you. That's why two people can do the same task. One is frustrated and fatigued, while the other is fulfilled and flourishing. The difference isn't the activity, it's the alignment. Most people are trying to achieve financial freedom using strategies that were never meant for them. They're following the crowd, mimicking trends, and chasing what worked for someone else instead of discovering what was designed for them. Alignment means understanding your assignment. It means recognizing your unique gifts, your calling, your purpose, and building your financial world around that truth. When you do what you're called to do, provision flows. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to beg for it. You don't have to manipulate or outwork everyone. You just need to stay in alignment because purpose attracts provision. You can spot misalignment by the presence of constant frustration. If every door feels forced, if every client feels like a struggle, if every project drains you instead of driving you, that's a signal. It's a sign that you might be out of position. God never designed success to be a grind. Yes, work is required. Yes, discipline is part of the process. But there's a difference between stretching and straining. Stretching grows you. Straining grows you. Straining wears you out. And too many people confuse business with effectiveness. When you're aligned, you may be just as active, but your actions are fruitful, not just tiring. You begin to see harvest where there used to be hustle. Alignment also brings clarity. You stop asking what to do next and start hearing what to do now. Decisions come faster, doubt diminishes. You begin operating with precision instead of panic. You stop throwing darts in the dark and start hitting targets with purpose. This applies to everything: who you work with, what you invest in, what opportunities you say yes to, and which ones you turn down. Alignment helps you say no with confidence because your yes is tied to destiny. And when your yes is aligned with your purpose, it's backed by heaven. That kind of decision making creates momentum that hustle alone could never produce. Financial freedom doesn't require more hours. It requires more intention. It's not about squeezing in one more side hustle or waking up 2 hours earlier. It's about understanding what multiplies your impact and what distracts it. Alignment reveals the difference. Without alignment, you may find temporary success that feels permanent. You may accumulate money but lose peace. You may gain followers but lose focus. Hustle might build a platform, but alignment builds legacy. That's the kind of wealth that lasts, the kind that blesses generations, not just bank accounts. Another dimension of alignment is internal congruence. That means your thoughts, beliefs, actions, and words are all pointing in the same direction. Many people work hard outwardly but sabotage themselves inwardly. They say they want wealth, but deep down they believe money is evil. They declare abundance but fear success. They start businesses but carry a poverty mindset. That internal conflict breaks alignment. It creates resistance. The energy they use to build is being canceled out by the beliefs they hold. But when your inner world aligns with your outer action, power is released. Things begin to move in your favor. Resources show up. Connections are made. Doors open. Not because you hustled harder, but because you got aligned. This is why Myron Golden teaches that the internal precedes the external. Before the cash flow increases, the mindset must shift. Before the wealth manifests, the belief must be rooted. Before the business scales, the identity must rise. Alignment is holistic. It's not just what you do, it's who you become while doing it. That's why some people can do less but earn more. They're aligned. They're not doing everything. They're doing the right things. And they're doing them with the right mindset, the right partnerships, the right timing, and the right purpose. That's not luck. That's the result of alignment. It's also important to note that alignment often requires letting go. You can't align with the future if you're married to the past. Sometimes that means releasing an old job, a bad partnership, a limiting habit, or even an outdated version of yourself. Many people stay in hustle mode because they're afraid of slowing down long enough to evaluate where they are. But speed without direction is dangerous. It leads to burnout, confusion, and disillusionment. You must be willing to pause and ask hard questions. Am I building what I'm called to build? Am I serving who I'm supposed to serve? Am I moving out of fear or faith? These questions recalibrate your compass and bring you back into alignment. When alignment becomes the priority, everything changes. You stop chasing shiny objects. You stop copying others. You begin to trust the unique path God has carved out for you. And the more you walk in that path, the more you attract provision, opportunity, and favor. It's not magic. It's a principle. The same way a car runs better when the wheels are aligned, your life runs better when your spirit, purpose, and action are aligned. Misalignment causes unnecessary wear and tear. But alignment brings smooth movement, forward momentum, and long-term sustainability. We must also understand that alignment is not static, it's dynamic. It requires continual assessment, reflection, and refinement. Seasons change, assignments evolve, and sometimes what was aligned last year is out of order today. That's why personal growth is so important. As you grow, your clarity increases, your capacity expands, your vision sharpens. You begin to notice when something is slightly off and you course correct quicker. This is how you stay in the flow. Not a flow of ease without effort, but a flow of grace with guidance. And when you live from that place, you no longer have to chase freedom. You become the kind of person who attracts it. Wealth is created by solving problems, not avoiding them. This truth stands in complete contrast to how most people operate. The average person spends their entire life trying to avoid problems, dodge pressure, and stay in their comfort zone. But wealth doesn't live in comfort. It lives in contribution. And contribution is born out of solutions. Every dollar made in the marketplace is an exchange of value, and value is created when a problem gets solved. The greater the problem you solved, the greater the value you offer, and the more wealth is generated in return. That's a principle that governs business, personal growth, and financial breakthrough. Look at the richest people in the world. What do they all have in common? They didn't necessarily work harder than everyone else. They didn't always start with the most money, connections, or resources. But they identified a problem, sometimes one that people didn't even know they had, and they provided a solution. That's the formula. You don't get rich by doing more tasks. You get rich by creating more solutions. When you shift your mindset from how can I avoid problems to what problem am I called to solve, your entire financial future changes. You stop running from pressure and start stepping into purpose. Because purpose always involves solving something that's broken, missing, or misaligned in the world around you. Solving problems requires you to be a thinker, a creator, a leader. It means you have to look at challenges differently than the average person. The average person sees a problem and complains. A wealthy-minded person sees a problem and creates. One sees obstacles, the other sees opportunity. And that mental shift is everything. That's why Myron Golden often says that poverty is not the absence of money, it's the absence of the right mindset. Because if you give a problem solver a problem, they'll turn it into profit. But if you give someone with a scarcity mindset an opportunity, they'll turn it into stress. The power lies in how you see, how you think, and how you act when challenges show up. The marketplace pays you in direct proportion to the size and significance of the problem you solve. If you solve small problems, you get small pay. If you solve big problems, you get big compensation. That's not just business. That's a universal principle. A janitor solves a real problem and gets paid. A surgeon solves a life-threatening problem and gets paid much more. It's not that one person is better than the other. It's that one person's solution carries higher perceived value. When you want to increase your income, the fastest way is not to work more hours. It's to solve higher level problems. That requires growth. It demands skill. It requires you to step up, not check out. And problems are not always obvious. Sometimes you have to develop the sensitivity to see what others overlook. That's where discernment and creativity intersect. Some of the most profitable solutions were created by people who were paying attention while others were distracted. They noticed inefficiencies. They felt frustrations. They studied pain points. And instead of ignoring those signals, they leaned in. That's the beginning of every great business idea. It's not always about reinventing the wheel. Sometimes it's about improving the wheel, delivering it faster, making it more affordable, or more accessible to people who were previously overlooked. The solution doesn't have to be revolutionary. It just has to be real. Fear keeps most people from becoming problem solvers. They fear failure. They fear rejection. They fear responsibility. But the truth is, fear is just misplaced focus. When your focus is on yourself, fear grows. But when your focus is on service, fear shrinks. Solving problems isn't about you. It's about who you're called to help. When you realize that your gift is someone else's answer, you stop second guessing and start stepping forward. You begin to understand that there are people right now praying for the solution you're sitting on. And every day you delay, you're withholding value from the world. There's also a direct link between problem solving and purpose. Your unique life experiences, your talents, your passions, and even your pain, they all point toward the kind of problems you're designed to solve. Maybe you've overcome something others are still stuck in. Maybe you've built something others are still trying to figure out. That journey wasn't just for you. It was for the people connected to your obedience. When you embrace that, you no longer see problems as burdens, you see them as bridges. Bridges to purpose, bridges to people, bridges to prosperity. This is where your work becomes ministry. This is where business becomes transformation. Not because you're trying to sell something, because you're trying to serve someone. Solving problems at a high level also means learning how to manage pressure. Every level of success comes with a higher level of responsibility. If you want to get paid like a leader, you have to learn how to think like a leader. Leaders are not paid to panic. They're paid to bring clarity in chaos. When everyone else is running, they're rooted. When everyone else is doubting, they're deciding. That kind of mindset is rare. That's why it's so highly valued. If you can remain calm and strategic in the middle of a problem, you instantly become valuable. That doesn't require a title. That requires perspective. That requires personal mastery. In practical terms, problem solving means asking better questions. Instead of, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what is this teaching me? Or how can I turn this into a solution for others? This mental reframing unlocks creativity. It activates innovation. It opens doors you didn't even know existed. Some of the world's best products and services were born out of frustration. Frustration is feedback. It's showing you what's missing. It's showing you what people need. And if you pay attention long enough, you'll find the gold hidden in what looks like garbage. Building wealth through problem solving doesn't require you to be a genius. It requires you to be committed. Committed to seeing challenges as invitations. Committed to showing up with answers instead of excuses. Committed to bring your full self into the process, even when it's messy. Especially when it's messy. Because messy moments often carry the most powerful breakthroughs. The discomfort you're avoiding may be the exact environment where your next level is waiting. One of the most overlooked problems people can solve is the problem of identity. Helping others see who they really are. That's what leaders, coaches, mentors, and teachers do. That's what great content does. That's what powerful conversations do. They restore belief, they awaken purpose. And when someone is reconnected to their value, they become more valuable in the marketplace. That's a service. That's a solution. That creates wealth, not just for you, but for everyone in your ecosystem. There's also the idea of solving internal problems before solving external ones. If you're constantly overwhelmed, distracted, unorganized, or insecure, you're limiting your capacity to solve problems for others. Inner work creates outer effectiveness. The more healed you are, the more present you are. The more disciplined you are, the more consistent you are. And consistency is what builds trust in the marketplace. People pay for trust. People buy from those who solve their problems with excellence, not just enthusiasm. That level of service comes from doing the inner work required to show up fully. So when you look at your finances, your business, your impact, don't ask what you need to start doing. Ask what problems you're currently solving. Ask whether those problems are worth solving. Ask whether you're operating in the lane you were designed for. Because when you solve the right problem for the right people in the right way, wealth becomes a byproduct. You won't have to chase it. You won't have to force it. You'll just need to stay consistent, stay focused, and keep solving. Your belief system sets the ceiling for your income. What you believe about yourself, money, and your purpose directly influences what you allow yourself to receive. Most people are not limited by their ability, they're limited by their beliefs. They unconsciously cap their potential by holding on to internal narratives that were never true to begin with. If you believe that wealth is evil, that success is reserved for others, or that you must struggle to be worthy, you will unconsciously sabotage every opportunity that could elevate you. Your beliefs operate as silent instructions to your behavior, and until those beliefs change, your external life will continue to reflect your internal limitations. People often focus on skill building when it comes to increasing income, and while skill is important, it will always be suppressed by a belief system that is not in alignment with growth. A person with incredible talent but a weak belief system will stay stuck, while someone with moderate talent and unshakable belief can rise above every obstacle. Your income does not respond only to what you do, it responds to who you are being. And who you are being is shaped by what you believe to be true about yourself and the world. This is why you can have all the strategies in the world, but if you still see yourself as broke, unworthy, or behind, those strategies will not produce lasting change. Money doesn't just follow effort, it follows alignment. When your beliefs align with abundance, increase becomes natural. When your beliefs align with lack, no amount of external success will be sustainable. That's why some people get rich temporarily, then lose it all. Their income outgrows their internal identity, and they subconsciously bring themselves back down to the level they feel safe and familiar with. You will always return to the financial level that matches your belief system unless you intentionally raise your internal thermostat. This is not just mindset theory, it's a law. Your life rises or falls according to what you believe you deserve, what you believe is possible, and what you believe is aligned with your identity. Belief systems are formed early, and most are inherited. If you grew up in a household where money was always tight, where rich people were spoken about negatively, or where your worth was tied to sacrifice and struggle, you likely developed unconscious associations between wealth and danger or guilt. And until you bring those beliefs to the surface, they will operate in the background, controlling your decisions without your awareness. This is why mindset work is not optional for anyone serious about financial freedom. You cannot outperform your self-concept. If your self-concept is rooted in scarcity, lack, or fear, it will continually manifest in your finances. No matter how hard you work, when you shift your belief system, you shift your results. When you truly begin to believe that wealth is righteous, that overflow is your birthright, that money is a tool for good, and that success is part of your assignment, you will begin to act in ways that attract and retain abundance. You'll stop tolerating environments and relationships that keep you small. You'll start investing in yourself without fear. You'll speak and walk with confidence, knowing that your value is not determined by your bank account, but your belief system determines your bank account. That inner shift is powerful, and it's what separates those who grow exponentially from those who plateau indefinitely. One of the key beliefs you must adopt is that financial growth is not just for others, it's for you. Many people subconsciously exclude themselves from abundance because they believe they missed their chance, or they made too many mistakes, or they're not that type of person. This is a lie. There is no type. Financial favor is not about where you started, it's about what you're willing to believe now. God is not limited by your past, He's limited by your agreement. If you refuse to come into agreement with the truth of your potential, you block what He's trying to give you. But when you say yes to abundance, when you say yes to overflow, when you say yes to being a vessel for wealth to flow through, things begin to shift in ways you can't explain. Belief drives behavior. When you believe you are valuable, you will not undercharge. When you believe that your gifts solve real problems, you will show up with confidence. When you believe that money is a tool for purpose, you will use it wisely, not fearfully. And when you believe that success is scalable, you will stop settling for just enough and begin building for legacy. All of this begins in your inner world. It's not about being delusional, it's about being decisive. Deciding that you will no longer live according to old patterns, but instead will rewrite your beliefs in alignment with truth. The most dangerous beliefs are the ones we don't even recognize as beliefs, they feel like facts. Things like, I'm not good with money, I'm just not that smart, or people like me don't get rich. These aren't facts, they're beliefs, and because they're beliefs, they can be changed. They must be challenged. Every time you accept a belief, you give it power. You allow it to shape your actions, your energy, and your expectations. If you're going to walk into financial freedom, you must audit your beliefs regularly. Ask yourself where they came from. Ask if they are aligned with truth. Ask if they are moving you forward or keeping you stuck. You also need to surround yourself with people who have expansive belief systems. Environment matters. If you're around people who normalize struggle, who speak defeat, who mock ambition, it will be difficult to sustain a belief system rooted in abundance. But when you're surrounded by people who think big, live boldly, and speak life, it becomes easier to stretch your own mindset. Community is a mirror. It reflects what's possible. The more you see people who look like you, started like you, or came from less than you doing great things, the more your brain begins to accept those outcomes as possible for you too. That's why mentorship, exposure, and intentional relationships are so critical to your belief growth. Another key part of transforming your belief system is through consistent intentional language. The words you speak either reinforce your current ceiling or raise it. When you speak like a victim, you stay stuck. When you speak like a victor, your actions begin to align with increase. This is why declarations, affirmations, and confessions are not just motivational, they're transformational. Your words program your subconscious. Your subconscious then drives your behavior, and your behavior creates your results. It all starts with belief, expressed through language, and reinforced through action. To change your income, You must change what you think is possible. That means exposing yourself to new ideas, new strategies, and new levels of faith. Faith is not just believing that God can. It's believing that He will for you. That He wants you to be free. That He wants you to be fruitful. That He wants you to be a distribution center for resources on the earth. When you align with that belief, money begins to move differently. You begin to attract opportunities, favor, partnerships, and solutions because your internal world is open to receive. You have to be willing to unlearn some things. To dismantle false ideas that were passed down by fear, religion, or trauma. Ideas that told you money is bad, rich people are greedy, or that you should be content with lack. Those are not biblical beliefs. They are bondage. True contentment is not complacency. It's peace while growing. It's joy while expanding. It's gratitude while building. And the more your beliefs align with truth, the more you will experience what's been available to you all along. Sowing precedes reaping. Giving is the gateway to overflow. This is not just a spiritual cliché. It's an immutable law built into the fabric of life, creation, and economics. Everything in nature follows this principle. A farmer cannot expect a harvest without planting seed. A business owner cannot expect revenue without first creating value. A relationship cannot flourish without intentional investment. In the same way, financial overflow does not come before giving. It comes because of it. Most people are waiting for increase before they give, but the truth is that increase responds to generosity. Wealth flows to those who have proven they know what to do with it. And one of the most powerful signals you can send to the universe, to your creator, and to your own subconscious is the act of giving. Giving is not just a physical transaction, it is a declaration of trust. When you give, you declare that you believe in a source greater than yourself. You announce that you're not owned by your money, but that you own it. Giving breaks the back of scarcity. It forces you to confront your beliefs about supply, fear, and control. A person who clutches their last dollar tightly will repel increase because they have declared with their actions that they don't believe more is coming. A person who gives freely, even sacrificially, creates a flow. That flow is what attracts more. It's counterintuitive, but it's law. When you release what's in your hand, you make room to receive what's in God's hand. Giving also positions you as a steward. And God doesn't increase owners, He increases stewards. A steward is someone who understands that nothing they have truly belongs to them. It's all on assignment. Money, like everything else, is meant to move. It's not supposed to sit stagnant, hidden in fear, or spent on things that don't matter. When you give, you activate your role as a distributor. That distribution signals responsibility, and responsibility attracts resources. The reason some people don't have more is because they've shown no evidence that they'll do anything meaningful with more. But when you prove that you can be trusted to manage what you have, by giving, by blessing, by sowing, you become a candidate for multiplication. The greatest wealth builders in history understood the power of giving, not just giving to charity out of obligation, but giving with intention, with joy, with strategy. Giving should be part of your financial strategy. Not something you do if there's anything left over. You don't tip God. You prioritize giving because it shifts your mindset from survival to abundance. It activates the law of reciprocity. It reminds you that you are not your source, and thank God for that. Because if you're your own source, you're in trouble. But when you know that your source is unlimited, giving becomes easy. It becomes joyful. And that joy attracts more opportunities, more favor, more abundance. People often ask, how can I give when I'm struggling? The better question is, how can you afford not to? Giving when you have little is the purest form of faith. It's you saying, I believe that where I am is not where I'll stay. I believe that this seed will produce a harvest greater than what I'm giving up. And you can't fake that kind of faith. Heaven responds to it. Doors open because of it. Miracles move toward it. Giving is not losing, it's planting. And just like you don't cry over seeds planted in soil, you shouldn't mourn over money that's sound in faith. You expect it to grow. You water it with expectancy. You speak life over it. And you keep sowing because harvests are determined by consistency, not convenience. Sowing also recalibrates your identity. When you give, you're acting like someone who has more than enough. You're aligning your behavior with your future, not your present. And that identity shift matters. If you see yourself as broke, needy, and desperate, you'll act in ways that maintain that identity. But if you start giving like someone who is blessed to be a blessing, your internal thermostat begins to rise. You start making decisions based on abundance, not anxiety. You start attracting connections based on contribution, not competition. You start showing up with authority because you've decided you are a river, not a reservoir, and rivers are always replenished. Giving is not just about money. You can give time, value, insight, service, encouragement, wisdom. Money is just one vehicle. The principle works in every area of life. The more you give, the more you expand. The more you pour out, the more space you create to be filled. This is why stingy people often stay small. Their world shrinks to the size of their fear. But generous people live in expansion. They're always receiving new opportunities, ideas, relationships, and yes, money. Not because they're lucky, but because they've mastered the principle. Sowing precedes reaping. Always. There's also a timing element to giving that many overlook. You don't always reap in the same season you sow. That's where faith comes in. Some seeds take time. But delayed harvest doesn't mean denied harvest. You must keep sowing even when it feels like nothing is happening. You must trust the process. You must understand that seeds grow underground before they ever break the surface. And often, your biggest harvest will come from the seeds you sow during your hardest seasons. When you give out of lack, out of pain, Out of faith, those seeds are precious. They carry weight, they carry testimony, they carry power, and they return multiplied. Giving also breaks cycles. Financial trauma is real. Many people grew up in households where there was never enough, where giving was discouraged, where fear ruled finances. When you start giving intentionally, you break that generational pattern. You say, this stops with me. I will not pass down lack, I will pass down legacy. And legacy starts with giving. You can't teach your children about wealth if you haven't taught them about generosity. You can't build a kingdom business if you're afraid to part with the tithe. You can't receive like a river if you think like a dam. The flow starts with release. One of the hidden benefits of giving is clarity. When you become a giver, you start seeing money differently. You become a better manager, a wiser investor, a more strategic thinker. You start asking, where will this do the most good? That question alone elevates your financial intelligence because givers think long term. They think impact. They think multiplication. And that mindset will separate you from 90% of the population. Giving also invites divine partnership. When you give, you enter into a covenant of increase. You say, God, I trust you more than I trust this check. I trust you more than I trust my plans. I trust that you are the source and I am the steward. Too many people want the fruit of generosity without the root of discipline. But givers aren't just spontaneous. They're strategic. They budget giving. They plan generosity. They track where their seed is going because they're expecting a return. And that expectation fuels excellence. It fuels creativity. It fuels stewardship. When you give with purpose, everything you do becomes elevated. Because now, you're not just working for yourself, you're working for your assignment. You're building something that outlives you. You're moving from survival to significance. If you've ever wondered why certain people seem to always attract opportunity, favor, and overflow, look closely. You'll often find a pattern of giving. Not just random acts of kindness, but intentional sowing. They give when it's hard. They give when it's inconvenient. They give because they made a decision that they will live by principle, not pressure. And that decision changes everything. Sowing precedes reaping. It always has. It always will. You can't shortcut it. You can't bypass it. You either honor the law or live beneath its blessings.